At 17 years old, I was already making more money than my dad. And I remember my mom basically just being like, no, he makes more money than you. He kind of shadowed him a little bit.
Because you didn't come from a lot of money, what point were you just like, holy shit, they're talking to me about hundreds of thousands of dollars?
I sat in Jeff Fox's RV and he goes, what about $1 million? And I'm like, well, yeah, that sounds awesome.
Where do you start on the business perspective to run a racing? What does it even take? Where do you even start?
As a 9th grade high school dropout, I would say I would consider myself sometimes the dumbest in the room. Mitch Payton told me, do all your budgets preseason and then write them down on a piece of paper, fold it up and put it away. He's like, race teams can't really run on budgets. When we closed down 2-2, it was a $4 million budget.
If you were to do it again, what do you think are the opportunities? Like, how can it be done better?
I think keeping it simple. Most people don't know how to win. They overcomplicate the easy things. The little things are what make the big things, in my opinion. Supercross is still today the coolest sport in the world. Tell me what billionaire is running our sport.
The AUSX Supercross Championship is underway.
We created the Moto Business Podcast just to get conversation going around the business of the moto industry. We want people talking about it. We want everyone to learn. We want to grow the whole sport for everyone. Give us your comments. Give us a follow. Love to hear from you and hear what you want to talk about. And we'll see if we can grow this thing. Chad, mate, I have wanted to have this chat with you for such a long time because I feel like the world knows you as an athlete and as a champion Supercross racer and all of these things. But I feel like your experience is far deeper than that. You have been a business owner, you run race teams, you've done so many things. But I sort of want to start off with understanding, when did you start seeing racing as a business, even for yourself as an athlete? And how did that sort of transition come about when you started to realize, hang on, I've got to treat this like a business?
Oh, I mean, I would say that like when I came to the US in 2002, that was when, immediately you have an agent, back in the early 2000s, I felt like this sport was different, like it was a lot going on, you needed an agent. And so I started, I guess I won a lot of races. Like I won the first 6 East Coast races. And then it was just kind of one thing led to another. And it just immediately, I just recognized that it was, like I was having conversations, like not based on, hey, I want to move from Kurri Kurri to Melbourne or, Kurri Kurri to Europe. Now I'm having multi-million-dollar, conversations and, hey, this person wants to spend $800,000 on this. And, the whole conversation evolves quite quickly. And so you just start, I think, evolving. I was very fortunate to be around a lot of good people in the business world, whether it be my agent at the time, Bob Moore, Steve Astafan, even early on with Fred Bramlett, and then transitioning into dealing with people like Jeff Fox at the owner and president of Parts Unlimited at the time, which for people not knowing who Parts Unlimited is, it's basically Thor and the importer of Alpine Star. Now Alpine Star does multiple things, but those are, Thor was not Thor, but Parts Unlimited Drag Specialties was a multi-billion-dollar company, so you're just having conversations with people far beyond your understanding of money at the time. And I just think I was really lucky to be exposed to that, even jumping on a plane and how, before I signed with Parts Unlimited and Thor, I went up to North Cal and I sat in, Pete Fox's office, and, he's the owner of Fox, the brand, and you're starting to negotiate. At that point, I was 19, 20 years old, and you start having to represent yourself. Like, again, he's got James Stewart, Ricky Carmichael. He's like, why, he wanted me. There's a reason why I was there, but you start understanding that there's more to just business than just results. I think results get the conversation happening, but then, they can flame out pretty quickly. So yeah, I was just exposed to it. A lot of really good people that that I relied on, and even just friends. I think it's important for people listening. Like, it's really important that you involve yourself with good people, people smarter than you, people equally as passionate or more passionate. You can't be I don't like using that word, but the dumbest one in the room, right? Or if you are the dumbest one in the room, be willing to thrive and listen and learn. And that was probably, as a ninth grade high school dropout, I would say I would consider myself sometimes the dumbest in the room, but at 44, I've been exposed to a lot and been around a lot of good people that now I feel like I held my own.
I mean, when you think about it now and you think about the age that you're at, I mean, for me, thinking, like, because we're basically the same age, thinking at like 18, 19, and I'm thinking, I think I was making maybe $10,000 a year working in retail or something, and to imagine sitting in a room and people talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, I'm curious as to, how that even was. Like, was there a point, because you didn't come from a lot of money, your family didn't have a huge amount of money. So what point were you just like, holy shit, like they're talking to me about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, this is a huge amount of money. Like, it seemed like it all, from the outside, it seemed like it all just came in your stride, but because you were so focused on winning races. But surely there was a time when you were just mind blown, or that you and Ellie sat down and were like, oh my God, this is life changing. Like, surely there was that moment at some point through all that.
It's funny because everything you said is 100% correct. I mean, at 17 years old, I was already making more money than my dad. I actually I can remember the conversation and the look on my dad's face when, my dad well enough, but, kind of making comments. And I remember my mom saying, I made a lot of money. I think it was actually the Melbourne Supercross, the tennis center. And I won both nights. I think it was $8,000 a night. And so I got 16 grand just in one weekend. And I remember my mom basically just being like, no, he makes more money than you. And I just, like, you kind of shattered him a little bit. Like, he was just like, dad wakes up, his hands are toast. He's gone at dark, comes home at dark. And, but I hope that deep down that was a proud moment. Obviously he took me around the country and, and put the work ethic in me. But I must say that early on, I mean, you and I, obviously we're similar in age and we have a similar upbringing. We've been around each other for decades now. But I mean, my first contract was $5,000. I bought a Toyota Hiace for $5,000. So I was lucky. I was 16 years old and living at home with mom and dad, and they took care of me, obviously. But when you fast forward that, as crazy as it was, like, the only conversation that I remember being crazy, everything after that just seemed like it was an expected thing because that's what you were around, like your worth and the industry was really thriving at that point. But I do remember, it's funny, I'm sitting in an RV right now because the kids are all having dinner, but I sat in Jeff Fox's RV and he looked at me and he said, all right, we're going to do this. And I'm like, well, and you kind of like looking, and I'm 19 years old, relying on my agent a little bit. And he goes, what about $1 million? And I'm like, well, fuck yeah, that sounds awesome. Like, let's do the deal. Somebody wants to pay me $1 million just to wear at that point, some clothing and some gear and helmets, whatever. And I remember just being kind of speechless, and it's not like the agent's got your back, but it's not like that. You kind of, I don't know if you know Jeff Fox, but I mean, given a little context to the story, he heavily relies on relationships, and it's what I love that unfortunately he's passed away, but just one of the most amazing humans on earth at the time. Just what he said, and it doesn't happen like that. Like, he made the deal, and I didn't need a contract because what the guy said he was going to do, he always did it, provided any issue you had the conversation on the phone and immediately it was fixed. But yeah, he relied on communicating with the athletes, even though his job was to go through the agents. But I had an amazing relationship with him, and honestly, I learned a lot from him because of that.
And I mean, from that point on, I assume, one thing went after each other, and obviously your success on the track was happening, and so therefore you're in high demand, and your career took a really steep positive trajectory, which isn't always the case. But at that point in time, did you just kind of, were you kind of thinking about putting money away and thinking like treating it like a business, as in like, I've got this multi-year plan and I'm just going to do this and this is what I need to do for my future? Or are you just kind of taking as it comes? Obviously you believed in your own worth, which is awesome, but really, how do you kind of separate that part of it, the business side of it and the financial side of it, with being on the track and being successful on the track, which you just seem to keep doing naturally at the time? And did you just trust those conversations to others around you at that point?
Yeah, I mean, my wife Ellie is obviously quite clever as well, and we essentially learned together. Like I, for the most part, was the one having the conversations or the phone calls, but I would always bounce things off of her, and all, like she, though she wasn't in all the conversations necessarily, she heard it, right away after I was off the phone, and so we always made collective decisions on it. I never had a plan, and I still don't today, to be honest. Like I always felt, I blame Shane King. Shane King was somebody who I spent a lot of time with in Europe with his wife, Yvette. And one thing he always said to me, he said that money, you just have to be easy out and easy in. Easy out, easy in. And I was like, at the time, you're kind of saving nickel and diming on everything. And then I kind of, still to this day, I live my life by that thing. It comes and flows, and if you do your job, if you do your things correctly, the flow continues to happen. When the flow slows down, you got to go and recreate and, pivot a little bit. So that's what I always did through my whole career, from, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on, flying private. And I always hear, it's always funny to me, like I don't share the same perspective that a lot of like Carmichael, for one, he's like, man, I wish I had those hundreds of thousands back that I spent on airplanes. And I'm like, yeah, but like, what are you going to do with it? Like, you just, what, are you going to build a bigger pool, a bigger house? Like, getting, all the nights that you spent, at home rather than, spending it in a hotel or in the RV again. Like, I don't know. I just would never go back on anything. Like, I really feel that, I don't have any regrets. Like a lot of people, like there's things that I learned and I would do it differently in round 2, round 3, whatever. But I don't ever look back and be like, damn, like that was really dumb, because for the most part, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, again, think back the life experience, your age, flying private, you had, cool jewelry, you're living a great life and a life experience that, many could only dream of, right? So you can't always make the smartest, in inverted commas, financial decision, because you got to live life too, right? And it seems like you're still getting results and you're still, and you set yourself up and all of that. You've got to be happy with the decisions you made after all, because you can't change them.
No, and I just, I didn't grow up with money, and like obviously I live a very privileged life right now. It's like my kids and I and Ellie, we're still, doing fine from racing. I'm 6 years retired and I'm okay. So, I didn't make too many bad decisions. Along the way, you've learned a lot, and, like I made some investments in a Malaysian company, and it hasn't really panned out as well as it should have, but it's still there, like there's still hope. Like if that takes off and does what it was supposed to, I mean, geez, I could buy my own plane. So, sometimes it's like gambling, like it's, you have to be, for good or bad. I learned early on, if you're going to gamble, you have to be willing to, okay, how much am I willing to lose? Right. And I feel like investing is the same thing. It's like, okay, you don't invest, you obviously learn and there's a strategy behind it, but I don't necessarily think that investing it doesn't always pan out the way that it's supposed to. Half the things that sound amazing are never amazing. At the end of the day, everything that is good still takes time, effort, and a massive amount of work for it to work. And that's probably been my learnings. Backing up, like, I was really fortunate that the racing went really well. I was able to win and continue to win. Even now, when I was mad at getting seconds and thirds, I was like literally on the podium for 10 years straight or more. And during that time, I was able to, I think, give back to my sport, to my country, and aligning with, Mike Porer and what was Super X. I learned a lot through that. I wasn't on the daily involvement of it, but I definitely oversaw the project, and I understood early on even some of the things that I felt that we were doing wrong. Like, it was, it was a one-man show, which when I was there, people showed up to watch me, and it was unsustainable for me to do that year after year after year, racing year round. So then I had to make tough decisions on, hey, do I still contribute here? And then I pull back and I race Supercross only in America. Well, then some people love that. Some people hate that. Some sponsors want to pull back. Some don't care. So it's always this, you're on this roller coaster, and you're trying to understand what works and what doesn't. And so I did it to a point where I was, felt like I did everything I could. And then I actually wanted to go race pro motocross again. And so then when I chose to do that, that was when it got really, really challenging, because then I was racing year round, and I was starting to kind of get burnt out a little bit. And, Mike Porer was quite a unique individual to work with as well. So but all those things, like, I'm thankful for people like that. Sometimes, like, I didn't make $1 from that. Like, I was able to, my wife and I at the time were able to fly, and, and that was all covered. But I never took $1 out of, Super X at all. While Mike Porer was, Mike Porer was taking $1 million check out of it. So,
yeah, wow. And how did that deal come about? I assume he spoke to your agent at the time, which I think was Steve Astervan. But what was the deal like? Because he was obviously putting this series together, wanted you to be the front person for it, and you had a share in the company. Is that just how it's supposed to work? And your contribution was to show up and race. Is that what it was originally?
Yeah, correct. So, basically it came through Steve, and then, through all of that, because, actually, I think even still at the time, they were the Krusty Demons show, right? Mm-hmm. I believe.
Yep.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. Porer was touring the Krusty Demons at the time as well. Yeah.
So Porer owned Krusty, and obviously Steve had several athletes, doing that. So then that connection was easy. And then Mike and trying to think who the other gentleman was at the time, was, Peters, basically perhaps. They came. It was Mal Peters. You're right. And so, yes, actually, Mal and Mike came to the races in the U.S. And I love the idea. I mean, for a kid that was living my dream racing Supercross on the other side of the world. And, I thought, and I still think today, like, I was so blessed to see Supercross at the level. Like, you think, okay, some pink ribbon and hay bales in the Melbourne Tennis Center, but God, it happened every year, and I got to do it since I was 12 years old. Like, I feel really lucky. And then Supercross kind of died a little bit after us. Like, SEL did it. I believe SEL did it before us.
Yep.
And then it didn't really pan out. It kind of flopped. And so then it was like, really the only trump card we had was me. Other than that, it was kind of like, if SEL can't do it, then who can do it? Because they were obviously a very respectable company at the time for putting on live events. Anyway, so I just felt like I learned a lot, by listening, even though I have personal opinions of individuals that I got to work with, but I still learned a lot from them,
Totally. I think it's super interesting. I mean, that Super X period, they did an awesome job. I mean, to this day, doing what we do, I still look at that and go, man, they did a good job. It was well presented. The TV was great. They obviously had you. They had brought other great riders out. It was a fantastic for the sport here. However, then when it obviously didn't work commercially, and in my opinion, the reason for that is they went too big too quickly. The country wasn't ready for it. The market could only handle 1 or 2 big events a year, not 7 or 8, which is what they were doing. So it kind of was just too expensive for what it could handle. However, when you can't fault the production and you can't fault the idea, I don't think at all. I thought it was great.
I still believe it's kind of the benchmark that you're trying to get to, right? I know what it cost. I mean, they were spending $800,000 on live TV, and it was like, at some point I was like, is Australia ready for live TV? Like, I race in the US, and it's like, we don't even have live TV in the US. Like why do we have to have? But I just think that, their background of, where they come from and what they did, I understand what they were doing, but it just, the dollars didn't add up. And then also it all coexisted at the same time with the 2008 kind of world global, financial crisis. And so I think that probably slowed us more than anything. I think you have to be fair to the whole thing and really look at what happened and where it went wrong. And I think it's easy to point the fingers of easy things that you could have done better. But I really think that the 08, 09, crash, probably contributed more than anything.
Yeah, totally. And I guess the negative of all of that was of them doing such a great job is that when they left, it left an enormous hole, right? And I think I recall, at that time I was doing floor announcing for Super X, so I was touring around, loving it, just a young guy, loving being a part of it, but also kind of like you, taking it in and learning and watching, and had that opportunity and super grateful for that. And then obviously when they pulled out, it left it a gigantic hole for the sport, which probably took, I think it took a good 5 or 6 years. Until we really launched AUSX Open in 2015, really, and that was the next one even close to being back at that standard to try and bring it back again. But it left a big hole when you've got someone doing such a great job and then they leave. There was a big hole to fill, which unfortunately, the sport went from on a fantastic trajectory backwards again, and then it's taken a long time to claw back after that.
Yeah, and it was hard because, like, me personally, 2000, at the end of 2010, was when I started 22 Motorsports, and then we had the kids were being born every 2 years. And so, like, though I committed and I still came back and did some races, I didn't have the time or even the energy at that point, like I was so committed in the US. And so it was really hard and challenging for me to even come back to Australia and even kind of fill some of that void as well, and contribute at the level that I was used to doing year in and year out. So it was tough times. And I just remember showing up to, well, I always call it the Superdome, but what is it? Kudos Bank?
Yeah,
is it still
Kudos
that?
Arena. Yeah, it's just changed. I think they've just announced another change.
Yeah, it was such a cool time, and obviously we were a part of that. You ran it. I spoke
to you for a year and a half before running it. I'd been speaking to you on it, so people probably don't realise is that we'd been talking regularly, and I was able to sort of pick your brain on kind of how it worked. I mean, myself and Sando at the time, we went to Paris to go to that event and met Eric Pinard, and were picking his brain on things and how the US Open and Paris Bercy had been working. And then I'd been able to call you, and you were generous with your time to be able to give me your insight of what you should do and what you need to pay. And you know what I mean? I think there was a lot of those things that now you look back and go, without those opportunities, we would have made a lot more mistakes as well. We're able to probably benefit from the learnings that you'd had through that whole Super X period too.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm going to say we, because I felt like I was involved. I wasn't an owner or anything like that, but I was a big part of the project. It was a multi-year lead into it, but I think we all smashed it. I mean, it was like, it was cool, just like you said, just it was a race actually even cooler than Paris and the US Open. So that was the goal, right? Like, how do we make a new event that's on that level? And it was everything of it, so that was cool.
Sure. But it was really cool. I want to talk, I want to talk race team, because now we've talked about your experience as essentially a series promoter. So now I want to go into, team ownership and like, where do you start? I mean, you're an athlete, you want to put together the best deal to suit you as an athlete to achieve your results, I'm guessing. But then where do you start on the business perspective to run a race team? Like, what does it even take? Where do you even start to pull something like that off?
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple things. And I think that, like, so when I did it, we had a title sponsor kind of step up around the 800 grand. Actually, it was 800 grand. And for me, it was like, that's good enough. Like, I feel confident that with that entry, we can continue to make it good. What I learned, and some of the best advice, Mitch Payton told me, he said, make your budgets, do all your budgets preseason, and then write them down on a piece of paper, fold it up, and put it away. And then at the end of the year, look back and go, holy fuck, we went really big over this budget. Or, hey, we were actually okay. He's like, race teams can't really run on budgets. And I just think that that's true. Like, I think that if you want to win, and I was trying to win races and titles, I wasn't, I was able to win races, but I wasn't able to win a title. I felt like 12 and 14 were titles that got away, from silly little injuries. But even 11, we were close, like, I think I was only 3 points out of it. But to run a team at that level, it never stops. Like, it felt like when I closed it down, it was kind of like staffing wise, I felt like we got to a point where it's like, okay, this is good. Like, I like this. I like the group. But it's, I don't even know where to shine light at this point, but I loved it. Like, I can't wait I've already started creating it, to be honest, but, it's for another podcast, maybe when I pull it off. But racing, it never changes. The understanding on how to win doesn't change, hasn't changed. You have to be smart, and sometimes there is a budget, and so you have to stay within the budget. But I was really, I don't know, I was just lucky to have, again, good people like Mitch Payton, to bounce ideas off of. We early on we worked with Honda, and our Tutu Motorsports worked out of HRC's building. At the time, they had closed down their road racing, and so motocross was right across from us, and then we took over the road racing shop. And so you're immersed in probably polar opposite to how a Tutu Motorsports team, like, we're not corporate, we're running it, trying to win races. And then you're probably talking about HRC, who is one of the biggest, most corporate entities out there. And we're trying to work within those confines a little bit. You learn a lot, like you get frustrated and you understand, but then it's just kind of like, how do you maneuver? How do you coexist? And those are the things that sometimes are more harder to understand than the financial and the business side of it. I guess that's part of the business, right? Is the politics of the world and learning that side of it. Like sometimes, like I was the racer, so I was always a little bit like, I think, I'm still wired like a racer, but it would be easier to run a team today than what it was to be the team owner plus the racer. Because right now I think it's easier for me to stay on budget than when I was the racer, there was no budget, literally.
And I can imagine as well, like the decision at that point is kind of, people are offering you, I'll just pick hundreds of thousands, $1 million to go racing. And then you've got to think, well, if I do this team myself, it's got to bring in X. You have a naming rights partner at 800,000. That's a good start. And then you're probably going through the list of budget things of what costs you can get covered and hoping at the end that you come off, as good as you would if you were just a racer, given the fact that you're going to be doing all this extra work, right? I mean, how do you even do your testing, do your writing, do your training, and then no doubt your phone's blowing up and emails are blowing up about God knows what. I mean, you created a brand, a really strong brand. I mean, I think what sits with me at the time was the look and feel of that team was really innovative. Like it was really slick and cool. You guys had the kind of red outfits, red pants, which was kind of out there, and everyone else was kind of just hardcore racer, the same that had been seen for so many years. And so, where did even that come from? Just to create your own brand and it stand apart from the rest? Was that just an idea you had? You wanted it to be different?
I still today, like when I run a team again, like I think I would still do it all those same ways, like there's a lot of teams that you can see that evolved because of what we did. I think that we pushed teams to be better in areas that they were pretty stale. And then it's kind of like I see a lot of things pretty stale right now. So I think that when you come in and do it, it would be nice to revamp things. But I always like year one, it was kind of like clean and white, right? Because Honda they supplied bikes, but they didn't really do anything. Like they wouldn't give me the factory bike. They wouldn't do anything. Well, then, then I start succeed, cause like backing up a little bit, I'm 20, what was I, 28 at the time?
Still
28 years old. Like today, Eli Tomac just signed a contract for factory KTM of all people, that kind of shows you how desperate KTM is when they're signing a 33-year-old to a contract. That's unheard of. I always think that I was a baby at 28 and here, like, but at the time you were kind of used goods. Like no one really at the time, like when I left Kawasaki, like I didn't have any real options, even though I was still pretty good and like I was on the podium all the time, still winning races. No one was really, and again, it was kind of post 2008 crash. So everyone was a little weird on budgeting and things like that. And there was kind of like a new generation coming through, and thankfully that didn't really pan out. And so we were able to stay competitive longer. So that's really why Tutu became a race team, is because I don't know, like I love Formula One. I love MotoGP. I probably love MotoGP more than I do Formula One, but I enjoy like all my gear kits. Like I played a role in all of it. Like they gave me the AI file so that I could go on my computer and I would do all the color blocking and send it to them. And it's funny because a lot of people were always like, oh my God, he's so hard to work with. But I just was passionate. Like it wasn't about just slamming logos and colors here and there. Like I really kind of had this vision, and it was hard to get the vision out. And so it was easier if they just gave me the program for my computer and Fox was super cool at the time. Well, Fox, but I was Shift, obviously. But Fox and Shift, for people don't know, that they are the same company, or were, and so I just always designed that stuff. And then year 2, when you saw the red pants, Honda stepped up. They put us in their race shop. We were coexisting as a race team with them. I had full factory bikes, parts, all those things. So it was more, hey, I'm a part of Honda now. And I always felt like I loved Ducati, and back in the Ferrari days when they always had red pants. When I was in Europe, what was it, Marlboro at the time? No, not Marlboro. Winchester, I think it was. When Sharkey was there, and it was all white. They had all white uniforms with red pants. And Rinaldi Yamaha always did really cool stuff like that. And so I don't know, just black pants are the most boring thing in the world. And so I always thought that it would be cool to, kind of change it up. And it worked, because I think it was attention, and it set us apart. We were different. Not only were we different in the way we thought and the way we did things, how we went racing, but we also looked apart. So it kind of fit the mold a little bit. So, but I loved the team. It was so much fun, and it was stressful at times. A lot of people, it's always funny, everybody wants to say, oh my God, it must have been so hard. And it really wasn't, because I think that if you hire the right people, you don't have to micromanage. For the most part, I was always in Florida, and the team was in California. And so we kind of just, it was always on the phone. I would almost every day talk to, Dave Osterman on the phone. Lars, who now is the team manager at HRC, was my mechanic, and, I would communicate with him every day. And I even I get a kick out of, where he's at. And all my people are on factory teams and high level jobs, and that makes me proud, because those guys were all really, really good. And it wasn't like I plucked them from factory teams. Lars was the truck driver for the practice bikes, the test truck, and I got to, actually, it was funny. I was doing a race in Newcastle, and PC gave me a bike in California. And then Lars basically came out to open up the Honda track so that I could ride it and do some testing with Bones at PC. And I just got some suspension settings, and then I took that suspension to race in Newcastle. I think that was the end of 2010. So it would have been October-ish 2010. Anyway, maybe even later than that. Yeah. And it was my first time. That was when I rode that Vodafone bike.
Vodafone, yep.
Which
was cool.
And
having Vodafone was huge at the time. I mean, to have a telecom brand involved in our sport. I mean, now we have Boost, which is amazing, and you were a part of that too. But to have them at that time was huge. It was like, holy shit, Vodafone's sponsoring in Supercross. So it was massive, and you brought them in.
And that was honestly, it was what the first itch, the little scratch of the itch of doing your own team, because obviously 888 engineering was Vodafone at the time, and I was quite close with the team. We kind of coexisted with some management and some PR people. I got to do a T8 test drive, and so I'd always kind of maintained a pretty good relationship with Roland. And at the time, that bike, all my plastics got sent to 888, and 888 painted, basically made it, they painted it all black underneath, and then they did the Vodafone silver on it. So it was kind of like a co-collab with Vodafone. And I just remember being like, dude, that bike is so rad. Just no factory bike in the US or Australia really looked that cool. And I was like, there's something here. I got to do it. And I just, I guess a backstory to add more context. I flew back to the US after that. I did a test with Troy Lee. And obviously it was a PC backed Honda at the time. So essentially the bike was exactly the same bike that I was riding, but I didn't want to wear Troy Lee, and I hated the helmet, and all I wanted to wear was Fox.
Something we're always trying to do at AUSX is understand our fans better, understand what their concerns are, what tickets they want to buy, and understand their general interest in what we're doing. So we've partnered with Fan Companion AI, who's our official AI partner for the AUSX Championship. And they've been able to get some unbelievable data on what our fans are interested in, what they're not, what their concerns are, and what their questions are for the series. And this enables us to get real-time data and make changes really quickly on the riders they want to see, the ticketing that's most of interest to them, and anything else that helps make the series better. So check them out, Fan Companion AI.
And so I was like, I can't do it. Like, it makes so much more sense to ride for somebody else. And I love Troy. Troy's so cool, and Troy Lee gear is so rad. But I just had this vision that I'm like, I'm going to wear Fox. I'm going to create my own thing. I'm going to ride a Honda. And it was just so hard to get that thought out of my head. And the vision of it was already there. And so at that point, I just was, and my wife just was like, let's do it. So then I literally made the decision in my my Australian apartment, actually, on Newcastle Beach. I called Steve and I said, that's it. Let's take that $800,000 deal. Let's do this. And he's like, you sure? You can get paid really well at Troy Lee. And I can't, it's not in my cards. Like I need to do this. So that's kind of how 22 Motorsports was born.
That's so cool. And seeing what you did and learning what you did, and now, you're obviously still involved, and you've just been with Club MX. And what do you see in the race teams? And what are your kind of, I don't know, like, what do you, I don't want to say frustrations, but what do you sort of think are the opportunities with running a race team? If you were to do it again, like, what do you think are the opportunities? Like, how can it be done better?
Yeah, it always sucks having to tell it what you think can be better, because then you give out information when you want to go kick some ass. But I think keeping it simple is, most people don't know how to win, truthfully speaking. They overcomplicate the easy things. They underestimate small things. Everyone always, from what I've seen across the board, not naming any particular teams, is that they fall short on the little things. The little things are what make the big things, in my opinion. Like, it's the little things that you have to do correct so that the big things fall into place. The big things, I don't know, they're always kind of hit and miss, but I just see so many people putting a lot of effort and trying to squeeze the lemon where there's no juice, or at least, like, it takes so much time and effort for what is what I see. The industry's gotten, like, to me, when I see it, it looks a little bit, it just, I don't know, like, they're doing things different. And I don't know that different needs to be bad, but it's not how I would do it or how I'll do it. And maybe I have to adjust to that. I don't know. But there's still people in the industry I trust that I'll poach back or go after, that I think have the same mindset and have the same philosophies of the big picture of winning. That's kind of what I see, I guess. Like, it's expensive. The sport's gotten, like, when we closed down 2-2, it was a $4 million budget. It's not a small organization at that point. Like, it's a well-oiled machine, and when sponsors started to drop out, and in Supercross and motocross over here don't make it easy for coexisting. They tell me they're trying to make that better. I hope so. But it's, I don't know how to put it out there, but it's like, because I also know from my experience of promoting that there's a lot of restrictions that the average person doesn't understand also, you know? And so it's kind of good and bad when you know it all. Not that I know it all, that's not what I'm saying, but meaning like you kind of know from the, you know, you've seen both sides of it, you know, like I've been the athlete, I've been the owner of the team, I've been the promoter of it, you know, and though I didn't do it in the US, it's still the same. It's kind of promoting is promoting. And I actually think that there's more red tape and more hurdles here than there is in Oz. So it's tough. I don't think that it's an easy fix or easy solutions.
I'm curious as to how you feel like they should coexist. If you have an opinion on, you know, I know there's obviously different models in other motorsports. You know, if knowing what you do from both sides, how do you think they should coexist?
My opinion would be that you have to coexist like a MotoGP, or Formula One's a whole nother level. So it's kind of hard to, you know, bring Formula One into the conversation just because they've blown up. Really, they're lucky, right? Like they're kind of just riding the wave at this point. I don't think Formula One as a sport right now is thriving. You know, every driver is miserable, hating the cars and all those things, but yet the sport itself is really thriving. And so it's almost like they're just playing with house money. So I think if you exclude them, yeah, exactly. I think if you exclude Formula One and you look at MotoGP, which, you know, now just got purchased by Formula One, or the same group that owns Formula One. I think that the commercial rights to it, the manufacturers, the team owners, they're all a little more clever, much more clever than what Supercross is, you know? Like Supercross, I always feel like we, you know, the meetings that I'm not allowed in are the manufacturer meetings because they're just, I don't know how to say it because I don't have anything good to say. I don't know. How do you say it? Because I have to coexist with these people, right? Like you need the manufacturers, but sometimes I feel like, here, let's turn it into a conversation where it might even make you uncomfortable. No. Like when World Supercross happened, the big picture for me was I just love Supercross, and Supercross should be a global sport. It shouldn't just be a North American sport at all. Like, I think it's the dumbest thing ever that we only race Supercross in America, you know, because in every budget, you know, we're talking business in this whole podcast. In every business conversation I've ever had, it's budget, North America. And it's like, you can only pull so much money from the North American, you know,
correct,
money tree.
Yeah.
And so why would we not want to tap into this world, you know, like this MotoGP, like MotoGP guys, like when I travel the world and I go to a MotoGP event in Misano or Mugello, you know, Barcelona, like everybody knows who I am. They love Supercross. In my opinion, Supercross is still today the coolest sport in the world. It's the only sport that you can take and put it in the middle of the city and you don't need runoffs. You don't need barriers. Like, we can just go and pick the world's most badass stadium throughout the whole world, which there's hundreds of them, maybe thousands. And we are unrestricted on just bringing in dirt and running an event, a live event, you know, anywhere. And it's crazy to me that is so hard. And the sad thing for me, I don't know how else to say it other than I really believe the manufacturers have neutered that from happening and stopped that from happening at every level. And so I wasn't blackballed, but I definitely wasn't loved for aligning with World Supercross. But I just genuinely thought that it was the best thing for the sport. I have a 16-year-old kid that wants to do it. I want the sport to be bigger and better. I want it to be MotoGP big. When Marc Marquez signs a $28 million, $30 million contract, Jet Lawrence gets, here we go, we'll get some hate from this, but like in my opinion, like he probably doesn't make more than $4 million. Obviously he gets bonuses, but I'd be surprised that he makes over $4 million from clothing, you know, all these, even, you know, some of his sponsors, these Red Bull deals probably pretty healthy. Mark gets, or did get, close to 30 million from Honda, you know, and I look at a Jet Lawrence who is equally as badass or more badass, you know, equally as marketable. You know, he's a kid that's on a world level. He's from Australia. He lived in Europe. He now lives in America. Like, talk about, you know, a global superstar, and he ain't making $30 million.
It's an interesting conversation, because I don't think any hardcore fan would disagree with the Supercross riders aren't getting paid what they deserve, right? And that you know, they can only earn what the market can pay, obviously, and that's just the same with in any business. But then, as you say,
in any business, you learn quickly you're only worth what someone's willing to pay.
What someone can pay. That's right. You don't deserve anything, in my opinion. You know, you don't. You know, otherwise, as an event promoter years ago, you should have made millions because of the effort you put in, and et cetera, et cetera. Or as a race team, you should have. But the market decides for you, and so being, you know, landlocked to one region, being North America, where the budgets sit currently for where Supercross, you know, the US is the home of Supercross, and so that's what limits the budget, right? But like you say, it's mind-blowing in the sense that Supercross is, I would say, I don't know, Supercross and Supercross riders are Formula One and MotoGP's favourite athletes. You know, that's what it seems like to me. And so, you know, they're getting tens of millions of dollars looking up to, you know, yourself and Jet Lawrence making less than a quarter of what they are. And the balance seems off, or something seems off. And the only way that can change, I guess, is when you shift to like a global budget pool, what have you. But, you know, but that is structurally very, very difficult. And what I you know, learned, and where WSX has and will continue to struggle, is because the US is the most powerful, is so powerful because it's where the sport is the biggest and where the market is the biggest. So the only way that that's ever going to change is to convince them to expand the horizons beyond North America, and then and have that market work with the other markets and the other the manufacturers in each of the regions. Because what I didn't know years ago and learnt the hard way really is how separate the manufacturers are, and how separate a lot of the brands are in terms of regions and how they operate around the world. So where it makes sense that like a global brand like Honda, they all should throw in, you know, for a Jet Lawrence. They don't. The US pays for everything. And so that's where the US market, and understandably those manufacturers are like, well, we can't afford to pay anymore for him. But the other countries are going, well, they race in America, so we're not going to pay anything for them. So until it breaks away from that, you know, how do we change it?
Yeah, and it's a tough one, and I don't know that our lifetimes will see it changed. Maybe not. Because, I mean, WSX tried, you know, hard. I think they got off on the wrong foot.
For sure.
It's probably another conversation, but
yeah.
But it was all there to be had. They just didn't do it the correct way, but then they were met at every stoplight as well. I think the easiest way to say it is, you know, you look at these Formula One team principals, they're getting paid over $100 million. You know, those are the people that are making hundreds of millions of dollars, you know, business, you know, deals and things like that.
Toto Wolff is a private equity investment guy, not just a team manager / owner. Like
I don't know Toto's, you know, net worth, but from what I understand, he's a billionaire, right? tell me what billionaire is running our sport. We are ran, I have to be careful here. Our sport is ran by a bunch of guys making 150 to 250,000 a year. You know,
we love it.
Some of these
incredibly passionate, and we all love
and
that.
I love that. And some of them they're my really good friends. Some of these people running these manufacturers worked for me at some point. They were my parts guy, and now they're making executive multi-million dollar, decisions. So it's different levels. I think, I don't know. I can't not think that our sport is so ridiculously rad. And though I think America, like, we should race as many races as we do here. And I love motocross, so people that are going to burn me from what I'm about to say, but I just think that motocross is for your core person and for your amateurs. But I think to take on the world, Supercross is what you have to do, because you can take it and put it in any city, in any continent, and have the greatest show on earth. That's my opinion on it. So I don't think we're anywhere close to going that route. I think that, the sport's I wouldn't say it's in a bad place. I think it's thriving. I see numbers. It sounds like it's doing well. 2006, there was 82,000 people in the Atlanta Supercross. We are not close to that these days. So
yeah, it's wild. And I think, to your point, and that, the big difference, in Formula One, et cetera, the level of people operating in there are incredibly experienced business people. And with that fuels bringing in incredibly intelligent other people into the teams and into the room and the discussions. And I feel like, honestly, as part of the motivation, sorry for wanting to do this, is just to continue the discussion, lifting, up the knowledge base of us as an industry or as a sport, to be like, how do we get smarter collectively together and bring more intelligent people into the fold and come with good ideas that are succeeding elsewhere in other sports, And I can't imagine sitting in a room with Toto Wolff and him talking business with him, because I know he just, blow the roof off what my level of experience. So imagine being able to bring those people in, and how do we, build the ecosystem or make the sport attractive enough from a commercial sense to attract that level of business person. I feel like that is kind of like the step. You want to be able to attract really well-known, really wealthy, really experienced people in. And the only way to do that is because there's an opportunity for them to make money, obviously. These people, they're not just going to do it for the passion. They want to do it because there's a real business opportunity. And that's the tough part. How do you do that? How do you build the ecosystem for everyone, not just so the promoter makes great money? For us, it's a conversation. How do you make sure the media are making enough money so they show up? How do you ensure that the teams have enough of a platform so that they can actually get more sponsorship? Because if they do, they lift their own standard. You know what I mean? It's like this kind of like inch by inch process to try and lift the whole thing.
And for the bigger conversation, it's like you see, why am I blanking? What's the group that owns Formula One?
Liberty Media.
Yeah. Like, so Liberty, obviously, Liberty purchased MotoGP, and you can see the influence of Liberty, throughout MotoGP right now and where they're going. I mean, now this year, and I hope that I can attend it, but Phillip Island's going to be the last, it's globally recognized as one of the raddest circuits on the world. It's loved by every individual rider, but yet commercially it makes 0 sense. And so they're going to go to Adelaide street circuit, and I think that that's cool because I love Adelaide and all that. But from the perspective of losing Phillip Island as a track, man, it just, like, they're making some pretty hardcore, things. And then I also see, because I follow it and I am interested on the business side, but you see like Yamaha, KTM, Aprilia, there's a few of the companies that are not showing up to the meetings. There's pushback, there's the motorcycle world is still a little bit of a good old boys, world that they don't really want. The manufacturers still play a bigger role than, let's say, private guys like Toto Wolff, having the commercial rights to AMG Mercedes. And so that's the difference in the conversation. MotoGP, you're starting to see Christian Horner show up. Gunther Steiner's there. You're starting to see that there's a lot of potential at MotoGP, and I hope that our sport has that kind of rise or, influence and people. And I don't always think that individuals are what fixes it. I think that just a group of people thriving for the same thing and wanting the same goals, not to name names, but I mean, you've sat in manufacturer meetings and gone to manufacturers. You come out feeling most of the time not that smart from what you thought. You're just like, oh my God, like I might as well go bash my head against the wall, sometimes they don't have the vision of being bigger and better, and they're probably just happy spending $10 million a year, and that's it. They spend it and they do it and they stay in their little window and they're happy doing it, complaining about it all the time, but hey, they do it every year. So that, I don't know, somehow I don't know how I play a role in changing that, but I want Supercross to just be, even if it's only in the North America, I'm more than clear that North America is where Supercross is. It's where it's thriving. But how do we fix it here first, before we go global? And I don't mean fix it, that it's broken. I do want it to be better and bigger. I do want the athletes and the teams to all thrive at another level than what they currently are.
Yeah. And I think, like you say, this, and knowing from a promoter's perspective, Felder doing an incredible job, and for them to do what they do is huge. And there's passion there, and I see those guys, and there's passion for it to succeed, and there's lots of passion through the pits. But what does that next evolution look like you say, to continue that rise, get some really smart people in the room, and credit to you. I feel like if anyone can bring some people like that and influence into the sport, it's you. And I'm excited to hear what's next.
Yeah, no, it's always fun. And really it's just about even if it's one clever person, then two clever people come in, because my experience, I sat in a meeting one time next to an individual that worked for a manufacturer. He probably made $100,000 at the time, sitting next to or across the table from a guy that was making tens of millions of dollars. Not me, another individual that was an owner. And he was an out there kind of guy, but he had some clever ideas, ideas that made sense from money. A guy that makes tens of millions of dollars was bringing something different to the table. And I watched this guy just flame him down. And I was like, hold on a second. You have never made $1 million in your life, never lost $1 million, never made $1 million. And you're going to tell this dude that's really good at a business, that he's an absolute idiot.
Oh, wow.
It was eye-opening. So I'm aware of the uphill battle of changing it, but I'm up for it. I think our sport can thrive and be 10 steps higher than what it is,
Awesome.
Let's call it your Jet. Lawrence Jet should be making $20 million. I genuinely believe that. He's, what the risk, not many people can claim that they go 17 weeks straight almost and can bring 45,000 people every weekend, that's Supercross is legit, and I think it just needs to keep evolving.
Totally agree, mate. I feel like this is definitely only going to be part one, because we got plenty more to talk about. But I appreciate it. It's so good to hear your insights. And like I said, this is clearly just the start of a conversation. I'm looking forward to catching up again.
Let's do it.
Appreciate it, mate.